Welcome, Kamara. Kamara is my resident go-to person for everything payroll. Now, whilst Kamara is not an accountant, an employment lawyer, or specialising in HR, at the end of the day, Kamara is the one that presses the button and processes the payroll for multiple businesses, and 40% of those being allied health professionals, practices, and particularly private practice. So she's been monumental in my advice over the last couple of weeks, and in a conversation I was going to have with her today, I thought I would share this as a resource for everybody, particularly given that she's just come out of a very important webinar today with a few updates. So I think before we go ahead, there's a lot that we know about JobKeeper. We know that it's $1,500 a fortnight. We know that we've got people who aren't currently earning $1,500 are getting paid the minimum, and there's that top-up amount. There's also that if somebody is getting more than $1,500, then you pay them that usual and you're reimbursed up to $1,500. That this $3,000 need to be paid at some time before the 28th of April. But there's a couple of questions outside of that that I think obviously relate to myself. Now, whether you are employing allied health professionals or whether you're employing reception staff, some of this advice is going to translate across multiple clinics. But the first thing that is a little bit confusing is casuals. Have we got any clarity on casuals at the moment and how it works?
No, we don't have any. Unfortunately, we don't have any real clarity around casuals. The question has been asked because in one piece of legislation it actually says one in, all in. So the only proviso around that was whether the casual has been employed for over 12 months. However, many of the HR bodies, of which one of them that I align with as well, they have actually said we need more clarity on that, because they're actually saying it's if the person has regular and recurring hours. Well, what is that, and what does that look like? And technically, should a casual who only works 4 hours a week really be able to get the $1,500 per fortnight?
If they're living at home with mum and dad.
So they haven't actually qualified that, and they're actually saying it's probably going to take another week to 10 days to clarify that with the governing bodies.
Okay. And there's obviously some concern about, or it's been made clear now that most businesses need to bankroll the funds and actually come up with the funds, which is really difficult for some businesses who have closed down, being able to find that $1,500. And then, does this start in March, or do you need to show a downturn in April? And in an effort to get it in April, do we need to start paying it in April?
Okay.
There's a lot of confusion around that.
All right. So let me first say what they've done is they've actually extended the time frame to December. Now, when I say that, that doesn't mean to say that you're going to get 9 months worth. You're still only going to get your 6-month block. But what it's allowing for is for this really to set in and take place. So you will qualify for a 6-month term of JobKeeper payments or reimbursements, whichever way you would like to put it. So what they're saying now is, we understand that potentially, and particularly people like you in your industry, Jade, who may have pulled their clients into March, and therefore it's filled up March, and because you weren't sure if you were closing, if you weren't closing, and there's going to be there are a lot of clinics that are doing that. So they're allowing people to actually provide April figures and May figures, and now even June figures. So it's not going to be March to March only, and that's it. If you don't qualify, you don't qualify. They've actually allowed that out for a longer period of time. So it's technically, you will have 3 months. Potentially it will only be March, April and May, and not necessarily June, but some people may be affected then and might be able to prove that. But yes, it's been extended out to December. So people shouldn't worry about that firstly.
Okay.
I guess the second thing is that's being touted, which I received word on from my industry body as well, is that the ATO realised that several businesses are closed and they're actually potentially looking at paying the money in advance. Now, we don't have any detail around that at this point in time. It may be what happens is that you would have to pay April's wages,
Yep.
and that would be reimbursed. And then May's figures you potentially might get in advance, because it will have like a showing of where you're at and what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, you know, just to make people feel a little bit more at ease around that cash flow. I also understand that they have told us that the banks will roll with that and provide people with overdrafts to bankroll that. But I'm finding through experience that that's actually proving to be a lot more difficult than what the government is suggesting. So that's unfortunate, but the ATO realise that, and they're trying to put something in place so that we get the money first.
Okay. So when you are deemed entitled to it, it's not that it just gets cut off on the 1st of October for everybody now. If yours doesn't kick in until you can show a downturn in, say, June, your 6 months will start from that June period, is what it's looking like now.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
We're not really sure on the dates of that, because this is just being touted. It's something that the ATO have said they would take under advisement and consideration, because they understand that if the business has been completely closed, where does that income come from to potentially bankroll the employer or the employee anyway?
Okay. And so on that, if you have, I mean, I know, you know, in regards to us personally, we did call a few patients ahead because we were anticipating a close, and we closed down to, you know, put some safety measures and stuff in place. So our March downturn probably wouldn't have aligned. Now our April will certainly look like aligning, and we did have a period of closure. Now my amazing team, who were all trying to contribute and being part of this together, did agree to take annual leave for, you know, the first period of that closure. When this does kick in, and if we are eligible in April, do I have to pay back that annual leave, or how does that work?
In short, the answer is no. So that was one of the things that was actually clarified today. If the person, or if your employee took leave, it will remain as leave. The $1,500 will be as a reimbursement for the employer.
Right. Okay.
So the entitlements will reduce and stay reduced. They don't. I mean, that was a big thing for me, because as a processor, the last thing I wanted to be doing is reversing everything that I'd done, especially on some of the larger payrolls where there's, you know, 60 and 70 people. Yeah. Reversing them all out and having to redo them all. So
that would be a payroll nightmare. You need more wine. Where's your wine?
I will. I do have a wine right here. Purple glass and all. What can I say?
Another question that is coming up is, obviously this would normally be a really happy time where people spend public holidays with their families. There's been a lot of public holidays around Easter. We've got another one potentially coming up for Anzac Day. I know my team took a variation in their shifts from their usual contracted 38-hour week. We did reduce our shifts, and a lot of businesses have been giving out variation letters to vary hours down, whether it be practitioners or admin. You know, if their hours are varied down to now, say, 20 hours, and there's been a public holiday, but they've worked the 20 hours in the remaining 4 days, what happens with that public holiday? I mean, I know I want to be seen to do the right thing, but when their hours aren't consistent anymore and they've been varied, what happens with those public holidays? How do we process that?
Okay, so I'm afraid that was also one of the things that has been very clearly documented today, that those public holidays must be paid. If that person would normally work on a Friday, which is i.e. Good Friday, or on a Monday, you have to pay them for those hours on top of what they worked. Now that's unfortunate. That's a personal thing, because I'm an employer too. That's unfortunate, but it's just the way it is. According to the law, and it's falling under the Fair Work. I guess what I would say to you is Fair Work have been actually really, really good in their documentation. They have changed or modified, even temporarily. They've got 99 awards that have been modified, and yet the NES provides for the public holidays, and that has not been amended. So that's why this has come into play.
Yep.
Is that they still have to be paid.
Yep. And just to get some clarity on, obviously there's JobKeeper, which is intended to continue to have people engaged, and a lot of us are in essential services, for example, and are deemed able to still open in the eyes of the government, regardless of individual opinions and where we stand on this.
Yeah.
If you are open, but you've got a practitioner who is choosing to self-isolate, is that then leave without pay?
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
So if somebody is choosing to self-isolate because they're either fearful of their particular personal circumstances or their health for whatever reason, that is leave without pay.
Okay.
And that's a most.
And is that the same for a sole trader agreement? I mean, what if a sole trader, for example, chooses for health reasons to close their clinic down? I mean, does that work a little bit differently because it is their own business and therefore they get to make the choice? How is that governed?
So the sole trader works like your practice where you employ. If your sole trader can prove a downturn, now whether or not that's out of choice because they are fearful, if they can show that downturn, they're entitled to the JobKeeper reimbursement.
Yeah. What if that downturn is coming from them not wanting to come into work anymore?
That's a sticky one because that you can't necessarily prove on the books one way or another.
Yeah. And I just ask you that, you know, there's no personal opinion or any judgment here, but I'm hearing a lot from a lot of practices who would like to stay open, but their contractors are making a personal choice not to come into the office. Now they've still got all the expenses to adhere to. I mean, at the end of the day, I think this comes down to personal negotiation and just
I was going to say
the business and the end game. Yeah,
definitely.
but that's still not really confirmed, and it does come down to individuals.
Oh, absolutely. Look, unfortunately, in these, and I hate to use the word unprecedented because I believe it's been bandied far too much, but we are living in a situation like that. So if you can negotiate with the person, that's your best form of outcome, is to try and negotiate with them. And look, you know, there are lots of practices that people are putting in place. I think we're more healthy now in the way that we actually deal with our patients. You would have to know all the things that we're doing in all the, and I say we in a very generic term, because everybody's, you know, putting things in place to make both their patients and their clients feel comfortable to just walk in and engage with you. I think we're you know, producing a much safer and much more cleanly environment than potentially what we had before.
Yeah, totally.
So the negotiation process is there, but for the sole trader, I feel, you know, I have some empathy towards a sole trader who's running a practice or running a business, because, you know, we all run our business under different guidelines. But when you're engaging with the sole contractor to actually come into your practice, I guess the best thing you can do is make them feel really comfortable that they're coming to a safe working environment. And I'm sure that you are. So that's a sticky one. But we have the same rules around employees. Yeah, it's exactly the same.
Yep. And look, I'm in my business is surrounded by employees, but I guess I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people out there who we run really different models in allied health, right down to room rentals. You know, you've got, you know, some people who would normally rent a room who aren't going into work, and then you've got landlords who are depending on that rent to keep the business going for when they do come back. So, I mean, look, you know, this is economic disruption like we have never seen before. And I think that is the key point here. Every single person, whether it be patient numbers, revenue, even just time. I mean, time is the new rich these days. And some people have got a lot of it, but then you've got some other business owners who literally have no time because they're scrambling. But this economic disruption and how we're dealing with this right now and aligning with what we're told to do, I think everybody, for the most part, is trying so hard. We're desperate. You know, we hear about, I'll see you after and on the other side. I mean, what is the other side? What does that look like?
What does that look like?
We're all desperate to get there. So, look, thank you very much for your time and confirming some of that. And I know that a lot of things haven't been confirmed and we're still yet to know. And there's a lot of things that I want to talk to you about the HR implications of payroll. But I think there's another webinar on that. Is that right?
We have yes, there's webinars daily, but we have another industry engagement on Friday. So I'm hoping to be able to bring you a little bit more clarity. And with any luck, they've pushed the government to get an answer on the casual side of it, and I'll be able to bring you that too.
Okay, great. Now, to those of you watching, I'm so sorry if you had a zillion more questions like I probably do that aren't coming to mind now, but simply leave them in the comments or send me a DM, and I'll be sure that when I catch up with Kamara again, we might try and address some of those questions that have come off the back of this today, and we'll try and get back to you and hopefully catch up with you again with another update on Friday coming into the weekend. But I hope you are all doing okay and pushing on and pushing through. And thank you very much, Kamara.
No worries. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.